Well, hello and welcome. If you've just joined, we're a few minutes late because the whole thing sort of crashed down around us and we've just managed to get it all happening. So welcome to the seminar, which we're now calling a webinar because we're on the net. Being Well-Being. My name's Pete Slattery. The 15-second introduction to myself is that for the past 30 years or so, I've been working with individuals, families, communities, mostly in Australia, but other parts of the world as well. What I'm going to do tonight, just to let you know about the process, is take you through 4 ideas. There's lots of ways of thinking about well-being. These 4, I think, for me, in the work that I do, pop up over and over and over again. I'm going to try and make it interactive in a particular sort of way, which means at the end of each of those 4 ideas, I'm going to ask you some questions for you to have a think about or have a talk about if you happen to be sitting next to somebody and you feel like talking to them. If you don't feel like they're real questions, and if you don't feel like thinking about or reflecting on or discussing the answers to those questions here now, then don't. Just, look up at the wall or have a chat or give yourself a massage, or just leave it for now and come back to the recorded version of this later, because they're real questions, they're serious questions. They're not intended to be upsetting in any way, but what often happens is when you ask somebody a personal question, they may well touch something for you because they're about the real things that people care about, the things that I'm guessing that you care about, which I care about, most people care about. So that's the process. I'm going to get rid of my face in just a moment because, and I'll pop back from time to time just to let you know that I'm still here, but I'm going to pop up and let the full screen be there and we'll play things for you. We'll have a chance at the end for you to ask questions, to make comments, and we can have a chat while we're still online. Okay, so let's start pressing some buttons and we'll see how we go. So there's our first idea. Now you've heard this over and over and over again in terms of belonging and connection. It is the most fundamental idea that you'll hear people talk about and that researchers will talk about. Everybody needs these 2 things. There's me. If you can pick me, there's probably a prize and you might be able to get to Singapore later. I'm in there somewhere. This is my family from a long time ago and it's just part of my family. It's my father's side. This is more recently our family from New Zealand. And there was 130 of us there, and you'll see a little bit more of this family a little bit later in a video. This is a fellow called Rudolf Drakers, and he said he was Austrian, subsequently moved to America, and he did a lot of research, and he worked in education, he worked with families, he was a psychiatrist. He said human beings are social beings, and their basic motivation, which means our basic motivation, is to belong. And he says this over and over again. This is being recorded, and the links, if you want to check this stuff, you'll find these at the end of the presentation. This is where we get to show you a vid. I'm just going to let this run. I've been involved in a project in Sydney looking at working with children and young people in a kind of holistic way. One of the things that we've done is produce 4 little videos which are part of that, and this is the first of those. So I'm going to get Susie to play that for us. It asks the question, what is it that helps kids, young people, children grow well? So I'll hit go, shall I? Let's have a look.
Building their confidence and self-esteem, lots of hugs and love, and feeling like they belong.
When we talk to children and young people, absolutely every single time they've talked about belonging, and they've talked about belonging within the context of relationships.
They need friendships, they need a sense of belonging. And I mean, where we are here at our childcare centre, that's from walking into an environment and feeling like, yes, this is my place, I belong here.
I think the most important things for kids is good parenting and being in a family where there's warmth, lack of acrimony, a sense of fairness, a sense of belonging.
Important, that's like my life and my family and everything.
That connection to culture, or that connection to identity, whether it be Indigenous culture or the place that you live or the surroundings that you're in, that connection to place and culture is very important. I know for me it was connecting to my Nyungar culture, but also getting an education and understanding the world around me in regards to the Western world.
So I think for children to have a good, healthy life is very important for them to have family support. Sometimes that happens easily, sometimes it's not, but it may be worthwhile to try and get as many family supports involved as possible.
Showing an interest in what they're interested in, I suppose, and just being supportive.
Lots of love. If all the parenting, you can have all the parenting strategies and ideas in the world, but if all else fails, just hug them and kiss them and give them love, because love prevails over everything.
Love, light, and creating art. I think that's what matters. Yeah.
Cool. I think friendships, family, that sense of connection with other people, role models. I think they absolutely need good, positive role models in their life. Fun.
You know what?
You going to do a roly-poly, Jack?
If this guy should be the leader,
How was that?
And on the sea.
My life. And my family and my friends.
I find seaweed extra very useful. No. Love and care and time with lots of adults that are good for them.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. Can you whack us back onto the PowerPoint? It's the stuff that people will say over and over and over again that matters to them. It's lots of different ways in which that can happen, but it's the thing that human beings just fundamentally care about. One of the questions, though, that often pops up is, okay, well, if you don't have that, then what? And I suppose one of the things that I find in the work that I do, and I suppose in my own experience, is that you can create stuff that's absent. Hugh McKay, who a lot of you would know as a researcher in Australia, wrote a book, I think maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, What Makes Us Tick. And he says everybody needs my place, but it can be small, temporary, or even mobile. And I actually think he's absolutely right. This is the big issue, which many of you would know as a magazine that's sold in the streets. If you're a member of Big Issue as a seller, you feel connected to all other sellers across Australia. When I come through Sydney, if I actually see somebody selling it in Sydney town and I say, oh no, I get it from my guy in Glebe, they just go fine. They get it because they feel connected. There's actually no sense of competition there at all. They also they feature somebody, one of the sellers in each of their issues, so you get to actually see other people. They're connected by that stuff. A lot of you would know about the choir of Hard Knocks, people who came together a few years ago from the streets and sang. And when you listen to them talk about what's really important in terms of that choir, it's not just the singing. They say it's singing with other people, and it's the other people that makes a difference. You can sing in the shower, you can sing anywhere you like. It's the singing with others that makes a huge difference. This is Mardi Gras. Now, not everybody loves Mardi Gras, but I specifically put this image in there. If you happen to be on a plane from San Francisco to Sydney at Mardi Gras time, somebody will hug you, possibly somebody of the same sex as you. That's just part of the deal. There are ways in which people can connect with each other globally now. And if people are slightly unusual, if you happen to be crazy in lots of ways in a big town like Sydney, you can find somebody who's just like you. Mardi Gras is one way in which lots of people come together from across the planet and join in something which connects them across the planet. Now, one of these children is mine. You might have seen me a little bit earlier. You can guess which one might belong to me. You might be wrong, but you might be right. Now, there he is, and we're in the streets of Indonesia somewhere. And he's known these guys for 5 minutes, and they're buddies, they're friends. He wants to connect with those kids. They don't even share a language, but for that moment, for that 20 minutes that they spent mucking around the street, they were connected. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do a bit of thinking about yourself in relation to belonging and a connection. And I'm going to ask you a few questions here. And I'm going to, just so you know it's me talking to you, you can get to see me for a few minutes again. If you don't want to think about these questions right now, then just sit back and look at the screen, or stare at the walls, or whatever. They're fairly. I think they're important questions, and I think they're fairly okay in this context. But sometimes you're just feeling a little bit sort of raw, and something might happen for you. But the first question is this: who do you connect with? So when you have that sense of belonging and connection, for a lot of us, it's to do with people. Not exclusively, but often. So have a think about, where do you belong? Who do you connect with? Sometimes that's the biological family, but a lot of us these days talk about logical family as well. The people who we're drawn to, and the people who we surround ourselves with, or just the occasional person who we actually are in touch with. So who? Secondly, what? That might be all sorts of things, and that might be an idea, or it might be a thing, or it might even be, I don't know if you think of animals as whats or whos, but it might be a creature other than yourself. When? Sometimes we feel connected to something at particular moments in life, or particular events in life, and they make a difference to our sense of belonging and connection. The next one is, where do you feel connected? Where do you feel you belong? And for some of us, somebody might answer that in terms of a place, or it might be the where is in relation to who again. I feel, doesn't matter where I am, it matters who I'm with. So where do you feel you belong? Where do you feel connected? And the last one's just a bunch of question marks for you to have a little think about, because there might be some other sense of belonging and connection that I haven't even touched on. I'm going to disappear me again. If I hit the right one, there we are, full screen. This is the picture I decided to put up. That's me at the end of this jetty taking the photograph, and behind me is nothing but bushland. And it's just up on Pittwater, and it's one of the places on the planet where I actually feel incredibly connected. I was going to go and show you a picture of the Swan River, which was a hugely important part of my, I was going to say growing up, but I can't really claim to have grown up anywhere, but it certainly was part of my youth. From when I was old enough to swim and old enough to be left on my own, we'd go to the river every day of our holidays. That's where I met people to chat with, people to go out with, all those sorts of things. This place has become a little bit like that for me. But this is the other thing that Hugh Mackay says, and which is what I wanted to make a comment about in terms of belonging and connection. Every desire casts a shadow. And he says there's a dark side to the sense of belonging and connection. And this is true. It's where gangs fit in perfectly, because they'll give you a place to be. They'll give you something to belong to. They'll give you people to relate to. They'll give you ideas to relate to. They'll give you a whole set of activities and things and codes of behaviour. So there's a dark side to this as well. This is the second one, identity or sense of self. Now, it's a much more complicated idea than self-esteem. There are some people who you would see possibly in the public arena who seem to have high self-esteem. Sometimes they even get elected. Would you want those people in your house? Some of them possibly not. So the idea of high self-esteem equal worthy, wonderful human being is a little simple. Really clear sense of yourself and where you fit into the world, that's something else, and that's hugely important. This is a friend of mine, Nick. You ask Nick who he is, he would say he's a Greek Australian. He would say that he is the godparent to my children. He would say that he's a childcare worker. He'd say that he's an artist. He'd be all those things. If you ask Val who she was, she'll tell you that she's an Indigenous Australian. She tells you where her country is. She also moves around, and she takes her sense of herself with her. This is Selwa, and she's making a statement about who she is, apart from her beautiful smile. You can see that she's an Islamic woman. She's also an Australian. Now this is Jess, and some of you would know what a haka is. That's a pukana with his tongue extended. That's part of who he is. He's a Maori. And Jess on his right shoulder has this, and this is a tamuku, and it's a tattoo. It's a traditional tattoo. And if you ask him to explain it to you, he'll tell you that it talks about his whānau, his family. It also talks about his genealogy. It talks about the people who came before him. It talks about his brothers. It talks about a Maori legend of going to the heaven and bringing down baskets of knowledge. He has other tattoos. When you ask him about those, he said, yeah, they're tattoos. But if you ask him about this one, he says it's a tamuku. And when I asked him what that meant, he said it's like walking around with my ancestors on my shoulders. This is Molly Slattery. She's my grandmother, was my grandmother. She's passed away on my dad's side. Now, Molly Slattery, if you asked her, she would say she's a woman, she's a mother, she's a wife, she's an Irish Catholic Australian. She's the sort of person who, when somebody would knock on her door and talk religion to her, she would certainly invite them in for a cup of tea, but they would leave Catholic. There would be absolutely no way in the world that Molly was going to convert to anything. She was really clear about herself. Here's a young kid with an interesting set of hair. One of the things that I think we can do these days, and I think lots of us do, which is to create our own identities for ourselves. And again, in the modern world, it's possible. And here's a girl who I know, who I was working with at a camp, and she's defining herself as a young woman in Australia in a very specific way. So that identity, that self, can be created. And if we're working with someone as a youth worker or community worker, then we can help somebody create themselves and their sense of self and belonging. So who are you? I'm going to ask you to have a think about 3 things, just really briefly. 3 positive things. There have been lots of things that have influenced each of us in our development as people, and sometimes we had hard times, and if we prevail through those hard times, as most of us do, then we learn from them and we grow and we develop. On this particular occasion, because we're doing a webinar, I'm just going to ask you to think of 3 things in your life that have helped shape you as a person, but 3 positive things. So one person who's had a positive impact in your life and helped shape you into the person who you are. I'm going to put myself back here, so I'm asking you these questions. So have a think or a chat, and turn to the person next to you and go, maybe it was you. And you can continue the discussions later as to how that person might have impacted on you. Also, one place, and that's why I showed you the river from before. And when I spoke about this one river, that's a place that's made a huge difference to my life. And the last one is there's one idea. One idea that's helped shape you and influence you, impact on you, so that you are the person who you are today. And they're beautiful things to talk about with your kids too. I'll disappear me again and move on. This is one person who influenced my life. When I went to university in my 20s, I actually went in and sat in on all the courses that I could sit in on. And then I chose my teachers. And Frank is a person who I chose as a teacher. I figured I could learn with him, and it didn't occur to me until years later how important that was. And we became really close friends, and then he went to another university in another state, Western Australia, where I was from, and when I used to go back to Perth, I'd go and work with his students, and the whole cycle moved around, and Frank would eventually take notes as I spoke. And just to scare your children if they happen to be in the room, I thought I'd show you this picture. And if you're looking going, who is that guy? Yes, it's me. So there's another person from another time, and my children can't quite believe that that's me, but it is me. So there you go, I won't scare you anymore. Relationships, not surprisingly for all of us, relationships are important. That doesn't mean we don't like solitude. Some of us like to be more on our own than others. Some of us like to be more with people than others. Some of us like to be with a lot. Some of us like to be with a few. Doesn't matter. Here's an interesting piece of research in this book by Malcolm Gladwell. And if you read the book, you will know the answer. There's a little piece of research in there about doctors who get sued. And think of it. there's one essential difference between those doctors who get sued and those doctors who don't. If you think about what that might be, sometimes people say how competent the doctor is, how good they are as a doctor. No. The difference is the relationship. If you think this person is a lovely doctor, yet they might have cut the wrong leg off or the wrong arm, you just forgive them because they're a decent human being. It's the relationship between the doctor and the patient that actually makes a difference. And they did a lot of research around this. They showed people hours of video, and people basically said sued, not sued, or what they said was good doctor, not good doctor. And the relationship between the good doctors and their patients, those doctors didn't get sued. And when they actually showed people 10 seconds of video, they cut it down, they went 10 seconds of each of those, they took the top notes off, so you're listening to tone of voice, and people were still able to pick it. So if somebody, imagine a friend of yours goes out on a date on the weekend, and you ask them on Monday, how was the date? And they go, yeah. Even that tone of voice, you know it wasn't a great date. After that, you'll get more information, but basically, you've got the whole story. Here's something from the tour list from the Good Weekend that a lot of you will know. This is from a few years ago. Paula Hanson and Michael Appleton, both mental health advocates, both recovering from their own health problems. Paula from multiple personality disorder and Michael from ADHD. Now you don't need to read all that, but I have actually verbatim put down something that Paula had to say, and it's this. Weekends for me were the worst. I used to get so depressed I'd ring the white goods department at Retrovision just to have somebody to talk to. There aren't enough people there to say, come on, have a shower, let's go out for a meal. So if you're sitting with somebody who you'd like to have a shower with, here's an opportunity for you. It's such a strong statement. We all need a friend who can provide a helping hand. And there's somebody who has to ring up at a department store to actually get some company. I put this in the last webinar I did. This is Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And there's a guy called Dennis Prophet who measures how steep a mountain is. Actually measures it. You look through this little mountain, through this little device, and you look at the mountain, and he says to you, how steep do you think this mountain is? And guess what? If you're actually weary or carrying a load, you're going to overestimate how steep that hill is. If you're standing with a friend, you underestimate. And if you're standing with an old friend, you underestimate even more. And a young fella said to me a while ago, how many friends do you need before it becomes downhill? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a really powerful comment about the nature and the importance of relationships. And there's my young fella. And if you're wondering why somebody of my age has children this young, you're not wondering any more than I do. Nobody's more surprised than me. There's you being a guide to Jack, even at his young age. So, these two have known each other since they were born. That's my other boy. And that's the girl next door. And these guys have known each other from the day they were born. They're there every day and they fight like cats and dogs, but they're inseparable. So, some questions for you. And again, personal questions, and I think you'd be okay with them, but if an answer pops up that you don't want to think about right now, it means it's important to you, you can come back to it. First one is this. Who do you laugh most with? And I know exactly my answer to that. And I'm going to put me back there so you can see who the person is who's asking you these questions. Who are you most likely to cry with? Oh, it's a big question mark, so maybe it's a big question. Who would you turn to for support? And your answer might depend, say, it depends on what sort of support I need. I did actually ask kids once, who would you turn to if you needed a shoulder? And they gave me an answer, and again somebody said, what would you do if you needed a leg or an arm? But that's how kids talk. Who would you turn to for guidance? And it might again be depending on what sort of guidance. Who is it whose very company just makes your day? And for me, it's these guys. And this looked like last Sunday, just to let you know. All right, I'm going to hop off again. In charge of self and life. This is huge. That sense of control, sense of I can make a difference to what happens to myself next. Now, what seems to be the case, and I think this makes a great deal of sense, is that you need to be in charge of yourself and your life, but you also need to believe that you're in charge of yourself and your life. And the belief is as important as anything else. Jack Slattery, my dad, quit smoking. And he did that, he was about 75. And I said to him, Dad, why did you quit smoking? And he said, I just wanted to know who was boss. And he was an old school guy with a really strong set of ethics, a really sort of strong character, if you like. Never smoked again. But it's an extraordinary comment about the power of power. Here we are again, the two of us, a couple of nice looking young girls who later on became a little thinner. Both of them lost a lot of weight, and I think one of these women has since passed away. One of them said this: the only thing I can control about my life is my weight. Some might say that's a weakness, and it is, but it's also a fortitude. Beforehand, people might say, I was a fantastic athlete. At least now people can see I'm a fantastic dieter. I guess in lots of ways that's the dark side, the shadow that Jim McKay was talking about. Children's ideas about well-being. There was some research done by the Commission for Children and Young People and the University of Western Sydney. So they went and talked with kids in kid language, and the kids came up with three top ones. The first one was what the adults call agency. Agency is exactly what we've been talking about here. It's that sense of being in charge, having some control over what happens to you. And if you think about substance use in a way which is damaging, I often think it's an attempt to take control of life, take control of an emotional state. The second one was security. That's close to belonging and connection. You need to feel secure and safe where you are, and a really positive sense of self. Same three things that we've been talking about over and over again here. There's a fellow called Len Syme who's done an extraordinary amount of research about this. He actually says he believes your sense of control is the one most essential ingredient in your health. You'll live longer, you'll live happier, you'll have fewer toothaches, you'll have less headaches, you'll have fewer stomach aches. Extraordinary. He believes that it's control, and that's the one that over and over makes a difference. There's a young girl doing that. She wants to be in charge of what she's doing right there. Little kids do it over and over again. No, let me do it. I can do it myself. I want to have a crack at this. And they rip their jeans and they tear their zips and the buttons pop off as they try to actually take their shirts off, because they actually want to be in charge of what's happening to them. It's a very normal part of growing up. These are the four ideas that I think, if you actually sit down with somebody and ask them about their weekend, those four ideas in one way or another will pop up. If you ask people what they care about, those four ideas in one way or another I think will pop up. Importantly, I think this sense of well-being can be present in somebody's life and experienced by them, or it can be created and experienced by them. And that's one of the things that's been running through what I've had to say this evening, that if it's absent in some way, we can create it in many sorts of ways. And it can look really different from person to person and place to place. But those four ingredients I think you'll see repeated over and over again. It also makes sense with individuals and with families and with communities and with organisations. I'm just going to run through a couple of questions that I think are quite important for a person to ask themselves, or you to ask another person in your family or your community or your organisation. And it's all to do with those four things. So if we actually start to think about belonging and connection, questions that I might ask is, do I actually feel welcome here? Do I feel like I belong here? Do I feel like I fit in here? Do I feel part of this place, this event, this family? And I'm not talking about when kids just get grumpy and stamp their feet and tell you that they hate you or that this family is horrible, because we get that from our 4-year-old and our 8-year-old as well. And not so much from the grown-up ones. So it's not those moments when somebody gets cranky. It's a deeper sense than that, that continues as people grow. Relationships. Is this respectful, is this relationship that I'm in respectful and mutual? And I'm going to go full screen again as I'm talking to you. Is it respectful and mutual? Am I trusted in this relationship? And do I trust the other person? Sometimes people show me text that they get. Person's checking up on their partner, or they're worried about a picture that they see. I guess in lots of ways you're already in trouble. Once I need to be checking on somebody's phone to see what's on it, and I'm not talking about being a parent and looking on your kid's phone, that might be a different discussion. But if I'm actually having to check up on my partner, we're already in trouble and we need to do something. Does this relationship bring out the best in me? And you know what? Is it fun? Laughter is healing. We need to be able to be playful and enjoy ourselves. Is my life better for having this person in my life? And when I'm working with young people, with teenagers in relationships and looking at what a healthy relationship is, that's a really essential question. Is my life better for having this person in my life? Is someone else's life better by me having this person in my life? Meaning, is my relationship with this person good for them? Or are there other people around us? And it's really essential for the parents of kids, and it doesn't matter whether you're separated or divorced or not. That's not the essential issue. Are the two of us in the lives of our kids really good for them, even if we're apart? The sense of identity and a sense of self. Hugely important stuff that I've been talking about. Am I able to be myself here in this organisation? Do I feel like I can be myself in this family, in this relationship? Do I get a chance to laugh and joke? Now, not everybody needs to have a sense of humour that runs non-stop. I tend to be a bit quick with my mouth at times, but I need to be able to do that at least at times to feel that I'm welcome there, because that's part of how I am. Are my talents and my qualities present in this relationship and in this place? And are they being used? Do I feel good about myself? That's a really good question. Do I actually feel good about myself here? And this is the last one, in charge of self and life. Do I get to make contributions to this relationship, to this family, to this agency, to this school? Do I actually get to make the contributions that I most would like to make? Because sometimes I get to make contributions that people need from me. There may well be other things that I'd like to be able to contribute as well. Do I actually have a say in what happens here? Do I actually get to make some decisions, and do I get to make the sorts of decisions that are right for me as a person, who I am and what I can do and what I bring to this relationship, this family, this place? I'm going to bring this part of it to a close in just a minute, and I'm going to stick around as well and see if you want to keep on talking online. We have videoed this, so it will pop up somewhere that you'll be able to revisit it if you'd like to. So I'll just run you through a couple of things, and then I'll actually fade to black, but I'll stay online so we can have a chat if you'd like to talk about anything. Send in a comment, send in a question. Who gets sued? That was the question that I asked earlier in terms of Blink, the book by Malcolm Gladwell, and the research that said the doctors who get sued are the ones who don't have a good relationship with their patients. Doctors who have a good relationship with their patients are less likely to be sued. And what's really interesting is that they're able to name and quantify to some extent the things that doctors did who didn't get sued. And there were 4 things that they did. They actually spent more time with their patients. And I'm finishing with these 4 things because they're so simple. They spent more time with their patients, and I think, if I recall the research, 2 or 3 minutes. They didn't invite somebody to go on holidays with them. They didn't invite them around for Christmas dinner. It was just a couple of minutes. And they actually explained stuff. You're feeling pain in your elbow. It's connected to your wrist here. See, when I move this, you'll actually feel something happening here. If we were to operate, we might have to do this and this, and it might have this impact. There are other da-da-da. So actually you get a sense of what's going on. Okay, I understand what's happening. It's been explained to me. The other thing they did was, and this is rocket science, isn't it? They listened. So when did you actually start to experience this pain? Is it sharp or is it dull? Is it in the evening? Is it in the morning? It's not complicated. They actually listened and responded to what they were hearing. And the last thing they did was this, and this is going to blow you out of your seat. You never would have expected this. They laughed more. It's not hard, is it? I was actually telling my dentist this as I was sitting in the chair. He said, let's wait for the anaesthetic to kick in. And I said, do you want to hear the 4 things that I read about? And he went, yeah. And I told him, once I got to the 4th one, he laughed. So I said, okay, you've ticked all the boxes, you can continue on my mouth now. We're going to come to a close in just a minute. That's me, Pete Slattery. That's my website. You're welcome to go have a look at that. It's some stuff you might want to have a look at, with some downloads. You can also reach me through the website. You can send me an email if you'd like to do that. It'd be a delight to hear from you. I'm going to do some thank yous. I'm also going to just check and see after I do that, Lisa, is there anything else I need to do? Or Susie?
No.
No? Okay. So there's a thank you to the people who put all this together. Without them, this wouldn't be happening at all. And it's Sutherland Bend and Eddie's and Project Youth. They're the 3 organisations you can actually thank for this webinar. I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been fun. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, please send me an email. Go and check out the website. Have a good evening. See ya. All right, now what do I need to do? Have a look at those. If I go back here, let's have a look. All right, this is where we go to the glasses.
Jenny's just got a question there.
Can you mute your phone, please? So, okay, all right, that's done. Oh, look, playfully, I suppose is my answer. I worked on the weekend with a whole bunch of kids between the ages of 6 and 12 about all the kids who have been adopted or who have siblings. We're going to have to get rid of this squeak for the next webinar, aren't we? These are all kids who've been adopted or they have siblings who are adopted. And we did a workshop for those kids about what do you say when somebody says to you, how come you don't look like your mum, or who's your real mum? So we called the workshop, yes, they are my real parents, I adopted them. I think you just say exactly what I have been saying to you in words that make sense for your kids. So if you go, okay, so you're sitting here at home, how does this place feel? Does it feel good? What do you like about this place? What do you reckon about that painting here? If we were going to come and spend a weekend in this place, would this be a cool place to be? Who would you bring with you? I tell you what, if you actually wanted to go somewhere with your best friend for a whole week, where would you go? If you actually are feeling a little bit not so cool about stuff and you actually are a bit puzzled, where would you go? Is there a place that you'd go to? Is there somebody you'd like to talk to? One of the things that a lot of us do, and you may well do as well, is I'm really making sure, because I've been working with teenagers for a long, long time, but now I've got young kids, I'm really making sure that there are good adults in the lives of my kids who I completely trust, who can take my kids away and have conversations with them, and my kids can say whatever they like about me, and they can rage against their father or whatever. And they can do that with an adult who they're safe with and who I trust. I never need to even know what's in that conversation. I've played that role for lots of friends over many years, and it's essential. So in terms of the questions, just make them fit, make them playful, make them hypothetical. Imagine this, what would happen if, that sort of thing. If you were living in a castle instead of here, what would you take from here into your castle? If we actually emptied everything out of this house, is this the place you'd still want to live with you? Or if we moved somewhere else, and I said to you, you can only take 3 things from your bedroom, what would you take? All those sorts of things. I'll have a look and see if there are any other questions. I'm going to get to go home, aren't I?
Jenny's just thank you.
Cool. Does that make sense, Jenny? Is there anything else you want to add to, or and if there is? Jenny is typing. Slowly. Jenny is typing slowly. I saw a guy on television. It was a famous violinist, and he started to play and he snapped a string. There he's on stage, thousands of people. And so some guy comes on stage and he tells him where the string is. And then the next 5 minutes was the most entertaining part of the whole show. He actually said, okay, he's found the door, he's going into my dressing room, he's gone to the drawer where I told him, he's opening the drawer. No, they're not there. It was fabulous. Now, okay, look, quite seriously, send me an email and we can keep on talking about this. I can just send you a whole a bunch of questions. Look, like everything, timing is pretty important. So, pick a time when, where it's a good time to speak with your daughter. And quite seriously, I think a lot of really important questions don't have to be done like this. They can be done really playfully, like muck around in the park when everybody's in a good mood. And, this is joyful stuff in our life, the sense of connection and stuff. Without anxiety, you can look at what makes you anxious, or you can look at what makes you relaxed, it makes you feel comfortable, it makes you feel confident. So you can go either direction. And often my bias, I think, is to go for the positive. With the kids around the adopted kids and kids with adopted siblings, overall my workshop, apart from some strategy, really the more confident they are and the more comfortable they are with that topic, it doesn't matter what people throw at them. Because if somebody really wants to have a go at you, then they'll find whatever it is that they think you're vulnerable about. So if that's one of your vulnerabilities, get comfortable with it, get confident with it, and then whatever comes your way, you can manage it. Cool. Yeah, keep asking and send me an email. I'd really be happy to talk to you. Now, anything else? I can show you the trick my son taught me. He can move his eyes without moving his head. Although he's 4 and a lot cuter than I am. I'm just going to sit here and stare at the camera for a few moments, and if we don't have any more questions, we'll bump ourselves off and go home to our families. Maybe I should check and see if my family's texted me. She might have actually already texted me and said, would you put your face on the screen because your son wants to see you? I'm going to check that and see if that's true.
Jenny's asked another question.
Have you?
Do you do any more of these?
I've no idea. I'm certainly this mob will be. Whether I'll be doing them with them or not, I don't know. I'm just going to wait and see if you've got anything else, Jenny, because I think it's just you and me. This is me actually checking my family in the middle of it. No, it's right. It's not them. My kids don't want to see me on television, on the internet. They've seen enough of that already. Yeah, good idea. Well, I think we might come to a close, girls. What do you think? Okay, look, good luck to you. Say good night to your kids. Give them a hug. Whoever else happens to be watching, thanks for being involved. I hope it's been useful. Okay, see ya.